So a couple of people over the years have asked me why I don't do stand-up comedy, and you know what? That's a really tough question because in the past I have. I used to do stand-up. Actually, no, that's not entirely true. I've never done stand-up myself apart from once at uni. In our first year of uni in performing arts, we actually had to do a stand-up comedy unit. It was like the first thing that we had to do in our first year. So we had to get up on stage and do stand-up comedy. Now, that is cruel. It is cruel because some people are not naturally funny at all. But that wasn't the point of what the course was. It was about making sure that people could get up in front of an audience and engage them and talk to them and learn their lines, come up with some kind of a story or something, and work out how jokes landed, how to work an audience, how to actually talk to people and get them listening to you. It was more about presence than it was about actually being funny. Some people were actually funny. Like there were people who went on and actually did stand up based on that because it terrified the shit out of them. But they found out they're actually quite good at it. I remember I did a piece that was all about the fact that I loved being sick. And that sounds stupid, but I loved being sick when I was a kid because it meant that I got to stay home and I got to watch daytime TV. And if you've ever been sick and at home and your parents weren't at home, you get to watch everything. Like in Tasmania in the 90s, there were only 2 channels, so that meant that I didn't get to watch that much. But there was infomercials. I love my infomercials. There was a guy who would just scream about technique, and I thought he was the funniest thing in the world. I don't even remember what he was selling. There was Tony Robbins. Like I learned a lot about Tony Robbins and personal power through daytime TV. I also, every 6 months or so, whenever I got sick or whatever, I caught up on everything that had been happening in The Bold and the Beautiful and Days of Our Lives. So now I'm a bit of an expert about that. And did you know that Marlena was actually possessed by a demon? Sorry, I couldn't even do that without laughing. Yeah, one of the characters in Days of Our Lives was possessed by a demon for half a season. And this is a show that goes for every day for about an hour. Anyway, I also learned about drugs. Not because of the sickness drugs, but the drugs that I learned about were on Sesame Street. Do you remember the guy who was like, "Psst, do you want to buy an O?" That guy. I suddenly learned what drug dealers were. Thanks, Sesame Street. I really appreciate that. Anyway, I did this whole thing about stand-up, being sick as a part of my stand-up comedy. And I was like, this is really fun. But then I found it incredibly hard because you've got to try and make jokes land, and stuff that you find funny isn't necessarily what the rest of the world finds funny. So since then I have done hosting, and that's pretty much what I do. That's now my thing. When I'm not talking to you or talking to a podcast or anything like that, I'm a host. And there is a different skill set where you're a host as opposed to being a stand-up comic. A stand-up comic is the person who says, I'm it. I'm the show. You're here to see me. Whereas a host is all about getting out of the way. Now, our job is really important, and I've hosted stand-up comedy, stand-up comedy, open mic nights and stuff. You have a really important job, and then that job is to keep the room alive. Because from the moment that you walk out at the start to the moment that you end, you're the one who's telling everybody there how to feel. You have to explain to them that the next person may be crap. And if they are crap, you're the one who has to try and bring that room back to life after they have killed it stone dead. And let me tell you, that has happened more than a few times where a comic has come out and bombed. Just absolutely bombed. Been too drunk, been too self-obsessed, been too whatever, and killed the room. Then your job is to get back out there and go, hey, wasn't that interesting? We're all on the same page now. That was terrible. Let's laugh at something else. And we've got so much control over that room. It is so weird how much control you have over a room just because you've got a microphone and a loud voice. You can tell them to do stuff and they will do it. You tell them to cheer, they'll cheer. You tell them to stop, they will stop. And there's actually a bit of method to that particular bit of madness, because what you are telling them to do is enjoy themselves. And they will. And that's one of the weird parts about it. I like the process of stand-up comedy, but you can't tell people to find you funny. They either will or they won't. But as a host, you can tell people that they're going to have a good time, and they will. My job is always about helping people to enjoy themselves. So why don't I do stand-up? Because it scares the shit out of me. I may be funny in some way, shape or form, but when I'm funny, it's because I'm bouncing off someone else. They've said something, I can make a joke about it. Like, I have the skill of being fast, but it doesn't always mean funny. And fast is useless if there is nothing to bounce off. So the great stand-ups, the ones who work completely off script and everything, Billy Connolly, their brain is fast, but also it's going in two different places at once. And it's going, here's an observation, and here is the thing that I think is funny about it, and I marry them together, and then I tell these people. And that's amazing that they can do that. Whereas my brain is going, I'm moving, we're doing stuff, cool. Hey, there's that thing that somebody just said, I can make a joke about that and bounce off it. If there's no one else there, my brain is just screaming, just going, I've got to get through the next 2 minutes. And that's why I like being a host, because I've only got to do 2 minutes and then I hand over to somebody else. And that's what I'm about to do now. Here's the next video on YouTube. I don't know, click like, subscribe, I don't care, do whatever you want. You're a big kid, I'm not your mum.